everybody, here's my impromptu live chat. It was meant to be done yesterday, but I couldn't make it yesterday, so I thought I would do this evening instead. So you've not had any warnings, so it doesn't matter if no one's here, but I just thought I would jump on and do it because I'm very excited about this live chat. This is one that I really wanted to do yesterday. As you know, I had my holiday last week, and so I'm all refreshed and got a good memory again. I was supposed to go away, but first day of our holiday, my other half broke his ankle playing rugby, so we didn't go anywhere. We haven't sort of done anything as such, but we've been at home quite a bit, so that's been nice. I've been relaxing and chilling out, so that's good. I'm just going to bring up my comments so that I can see anything that you guys say. So I'll bring this up down here on my laptop. I hope you all had a very nice weekend, or week and weekend. And so what I've got for you today is called the geeky side of dogs. So I thought it could be great to teach you a bit about how dogs learn, change in behaviour, what determines behaviour. So what I've actually got is about 10 minutes on each topic. So you could talk about each of these topics for weeks and weeks and weeks. So there is lots and lots of information that goes into these. Just find out my comments. Loads of information that goes into each of these topics, but I've just put them into 10 minutes of each. So it's just like an intro to each bit about how dogs learn and how it can apply to you guys and your dogs at home. So I've got little bits to share with you, and hopefully that will spark a bit of interest as well, and maybe answer some questions for you for explaining why your dog does as it does, what determines that, and how to change it. So, there we go, I can see myself there now. So if anyone wants to write a comment, feel free, say hi, hello that you're here, and then I'll know that they work. So first of all, geeky side of dog training. My first topic of my 10 minutes here is about predatory motor patterns. So I've got a sexy new whiteboard, and this is so that I can write things to you guys so that you can see what I'm talking about as I'm illustrating it. So it's blank at the minute. First of all, predatory motor patterns. Now these are huge when it comes to dogs, the way they play, and the way they hunt as well. So predatory motor patterns kick in when a dog gets either excited or over aroused. And obviously they're there all the time, they are internal, but they're generally triggered when the dog is overexcited or over aroused. So as soon as something does kick that up, the predatory motor pattern sequence will start. So some of you may have heard of it. There's different variations of it, but I'm going to write it out for you and show you how it works and kind of what predatory motor pattern is. So you may be aware of these, you may have never heard of them at all. They are very breed specific, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So your first bit is either scenting and tracking, or eye and stalk. Eye and orient, which is basically seeing something, seeing that it's there and kind of eyeing it up. So if you think like a collie, that's eye and orient. Scent and tracking, think like your scent hounds. So that's the first part of their predatory motor pattern. You then have stalk. So stalking again is like where they creep, they go low down, they stare, they move forward, they're trying to get closer to whatever it is that they're seeing. Chase is the third part of it. Chase, usually they try and keep chase quite short, so that they'll stalk to get closer, and then chase is quite a short part, but that does depend on the breed. And then you have grab bite, followed into kill bite. And I'll show you this in a second, I'm just writing it out. Some dogs do possess, which is quite common in Doberman types. So possess is where they want to keep hold of what they've got. So they've done grab bite, they've done kill bite, and they want to keep hold of it. So this can be quite common in dogs who don't like giving things up. They like to keep hold of things. Very common in Doberman types. And then dissect and consume. I've really overwritten at the start of this. So I'll put dissect and consume at the bottom, because not all dogs actually do that part. So this may be backwards. Yeah, it's kind of backwards, but I'll show you. So you've got here, so this is scent and track, eye and orient, into stalking, chase, grab bite, kill, bite, possess in some breeds, and then consume, dissect, kind of rip it apart and eat it. So I'm going to flip this around in a minute so that you can see it the other way. So it is breed specific, and not all dogs will do every single part of that predatory sequence when they get excited or over aroused. So as I say, breed specific. So collies, they tend to stop, whoops, mind myself. They tend to do the eye and orient, they stalk, they chase, they stop just here before grab bite. So they've been conditioned to stop just there before grab bite happens, which is why you tend to get a lot of air snapping with collies, because they're bred not to do the grab bite part because that's kind of frowned upon with sheep. So they will snap instead. Bull breeds, like my bosun, he doesn't do any of this. So your eyeing, orienting, scenting, tracking, stalking, he will see something and go straight into chase, grab bite, kill bite really, really quickly. So if he gets over aroused, overexcited, it's very common in your bull breed types and terrier types. They see something, they chase it, grab it, kill it, boom, boom, boom. That's very, very strong in their motor patterns. So this may be familiar to some of you if you're thinking about your dog and the way that maybe they play, or the way that they hunt, or when they get on a scent of something, or if they see something, squirrels perhaps, you will see things like this kicking in. So the predatory motor patterns start. So they are, I've got loads of notes here. So we're going to move on to the scale of genetic behaviour because it's very, very relevant to this and to the predatory motor patterns that happen. So if any of you have watched recently the Christina Cass live chat about collies, you will know what the scale of genetic behaviour is. But I'll show you it as well. So I'll talk you through it in case you haven't. Speaking of which, Boson's come to join me. Hello, mate. So the scale of genetic behaviour. If you took, for example, with my lovely whiteboard, this determines all behaviour in all dogs. So all dogs have a mum and a dad, and you may have the least aggressive dog in the entire world is your mum, and the most aggressive dog in the entire world is the dad. So if we took that as a huge kind of generalization there, so it's unlikely that the most aggressive dog in the world is going to mate with the least aggressive dog in the world, but we're just going to use it just for my lovely scale. So if we go with mum being the least aggressive dog ever, and she's like the loveliest dog in the world, and then we've got dad, who is the most aggressive dog in the entire world. And they have, so if you see here, we have mum, least aggressive, dad, most aggressive. So if we have a litter of puppies, they will sit, this litter would be about this big, they will sit somewhere on this spectrum here, on this scale. And I don't know where it will sit because I'm not a geneticist, so I can't tell you that, but they will sit somewhere here. So if we took, for example, if they sat in the middle here, the whole litter of puppies sits somewhere bang in the middle, just for ease. You will have a spectrum within the puppies here for their behaviour. So we're going within the middle. It could well be they'll be at the most aggressive end or the least aggressive end. I'm not quite sure how it is determined, but if you imagine you have a litter here, so what determines this as to which end they will sit at is the environment that dog is placed into. So if you took, for example, here, this dog, this puppy, shall I say, from the litter, could be placed into a home with a dog behaviour specialist, say. So this puppy is placed into a home with the most experienced dog behaviour specialist in the entire world. This puppy is placed into a home where aggressive behaviour is encouraged because that's what they like and that's what they want to see more of. Or in a home where they aren't aware of how aggressive the dad is and that could potentially be a problem. So they don't encourage it, but they also don't manage and control it because they don't know that they've got to manage and control this. So the dog gets to the puppy gets to practice lots and lots of the behaviour before anything is addressed because they're not aware of it. You can actually end up with, this is this puppy here. So even if a puppy is placed in with the most experienced dog behaviour specialist in the world here, it still will not be the least aggressive dog in the world. All of this part here will still need to be managed to make sure that this puppy does not become towards more aggressive and towards the dad end. So I'm hoping that's making sense. Now you can put any behaviour here and here, so it doesn't even have to be about aggression at all. That's not a thing. It can be about absolutely anything at all. So if we go with a different one and a different scale, fiddle with this. So we'll always go with mum being the least, just because that's what I've just done. Doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it's the mum who's the most and the dad who's the least, but we'll go with mum and dad again. Our scale of spectrum. So say like we have mum is the least likely to bark ever. So she's very, very quiet mum. She doesn't bark. She never barked in her entire life. And you have dad, who is the most likely to bark at everything and anything. And dad barks all day long. So he barks at everything and nothing. He will bark at himself, he will bark at you, he will bark for attention. He just likes to bark, that's dad. So he's the most likely to bark. And you've got mum, who's the least likely to bark. So again, your puppies will sit somewhere on your spectrum of mum being the least likely, dad being the most likely, and they will sit somewhere in the middle. Speaking of which, someone's about to have a conversation with me. So in here, again, they could be placed with the top dog behaviour specialist in the entire world, or they could be placed with someone who encourages barking because they like the barkiness of the dog. That's why they got this dog, because they particularly like barking. Or they didn't know that the dad is very, very barky and how much that would need to be managed and controlled because they weren't aware that it was a thing. Therefore, this puppy's had loads and loads of practice at barking at things. And maybe at first it was seemed cute and the owners really liked it. So it was kind of encouraged because it's adorable. So the puppies will end up like this. So even placed with a dog behaviour specialist who's the best in the entire world, dog behaviour, you will still have a fairly barky dog. It's just better managed and more likely to, there's been a lot of work put into the dog doing other default behaviours when they get excited or frustrated, or when they want something. They've learned to do something different because of the management and training and control that went in when they were young, because the owner knew what to expect. So if you took, for example, in here, if I took 3 of the noisiest sort of breeds, German Shepherds, Golden Retrievers, Dachshunds, I work with them a lot, all of them very, very barky, then you could, this spectrum of the puppies could sit anywhere within this. You know, they could be particularly barky, but it's likely they are still going to be barky, even if there's been loads of work put into them not barking and being quiet. They're still not going to be the quietest dog ever. There's still going to be a lot of barking, and that spectrum could sit here. You know, this could be the best they are ever likely to be, and this could be the worst they are ever likely to be. So I'm hoping that's making sense, and that's that my lovely graphs are coming across to you guys. But this is also why knowing what breed you have is very important. Even if you've got a crossbreed or a type, it's knowing what you have so that you know what you're likely to have to work with, have to manage, have to prevent, and have to really put a lot of effort into. Or if you don't know the breed, do you know the parents? Because if you know of the parents and you know their general temperaments, that can tell you what you need to put a lot of effort into and a lot of work into. So sometimes you don't know either, and that's really, really common in, if you've rehomed a dog, you've rescued a dog, you fostered a dog perhaps, it is common that you don't know the parents and that you don't know the heritage of them, you don't know what breeds they are, but it can be helpful to find out. This is why I love the DNA tests. I don't know that they're 100% accurate or 99% accurate, but the ones I've had done have been very, very helpful on my dogs. They certainly seem very accurate. So I hope that makes sense and that helps you guys. But it is important to know, you know, it's important to know what you have so that you know what you're working with and how good you're able to get them to be within themselves. So this brings us on to, oh, there was actually another point that I had with this. So this is very, very relevant to a lot of people. So let me scribble again. If, for example, you had a brilliant dog breeder, so your dog breeder is fantastic in many, many, many ways, and they socialise, sorry, don't socialise the puppies. They have, you know, a lot of people handle the puppies in the litter. They handle them a lot. They do a lot of grooming with them. They feed them great food. They are spot on with everything that they need to be. But they don't mix their own dogs, the adult dogs, the mum, the dad, with other dogs. They only mix their dogs with each other. And they hire out fields maybe to run their own dogs together, or they keep them completely separate to other people's dogs. There is nothing wrong with that, by the way. They're mixing with their own kind, they live with other dogs, not a problem. But for the purpose of this, if you have dogs who your puppy has been bred from, and these dogs, because of the way that they are kept, because they don't want them mixing with other people's dogs, they only want them mixing with each other, then what you have is a mum and a dad who do not have great greeting skills, because they might be sociable, they might be great with each other. There's ability to read a conversation and play and laying together and everything. They could be brilliant at that, but their greeting skills of other dogs are non-existent, because, I'm trying to write this out while speaking, if they don't have great greeting skills, because neither parent has that very strongly in their genetics and anywhere in their line, because they've been kept away from meeting other dogs, you know, for either for their own safety or so that they're not getting, you know, I mean, there's many, many reasons why people would only mix dogs with their own dogs, but some people do. And if they're being bred from, then what's happening is your puppies are going to sit somewhere, that litter will sit somewhere on here of mum not having great greeting skills of unknown dogs and dad not having great greeting skills of unknown dogs, and then your puppy litter will sit in here. So even if placed with the best dog behaviour specialist in the entire world, their greeting skills of other dogs are going to be between not having great greeting skills and not having great greeting skills. So they have to be taught, they have to be managed, they have to be very, very carefully protected, because the puppies genetically don't have any understanding of how to greet other dogs successfully, and just, you know, having great social skills and great greeting skills. Now, they might be brilliant when they're with dogs, but the greeting of other dogs can be really, really difficult for them, and that could be something that genetically they're not designed to do. That is huge. So again, it can help to know your breeder, know where your dogs came from. And again, it's not all dogs, you know, not all breeders do this, but some do. And it's the same if it's not that they hire paddocks for their own dogs and they exercise them together, and they intentionally do exercise them really, really well, and they give them enrichment and off-lead time, but it's together. Perhaps you have a mum and a dad who never get walked. They were bred together and they've never been walked since they were puppies, and they're just pets in the house that don't go out, they don't get walked, they don't mix with other dogs, and they've mated and had a litter. The chances of them having great greeting skills with other dogs, this litter, is slim to none, because they don't mix with other dogs. They don't practice that greeting, and it's not an important genetic component for these dogs. So this litter of puppies, again, is stuck between not having great greeting skills and not having great greeting skills, which may mean it's something you have to manage for their life, because they do not have that genetically. They don't understand how to do it naturally. You have to be there to orchestrate it for them. So, hi Rebecca. No, you haven't missed much, my love. I'm just chatting away with my lovely new whiteboard. I'll save the chat so you can catch up on the first bit. Right, so I hope that makes sense, and I hope that that kind of lands with a lot of people as well, that maybe it's making a bit of sense as to why your dog may behave as they do. It's not always genetics, but you know, genetics, you can't out-train genetics. They are what they are. So This brings us into imposter syndrome. So some of you may have heard of imposter syndrome. This may be completely new to you. So imposter syndrome is not a syndrome for dogs, and it's not necessarily to do with dogs. It can be with any topic, I believe. My understanding of it is very much to do with dog owning and in the professional dog world, dog training. And imposter syndrome, I'll read out the definition for you and then I'll tell you about it. So it's the psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their own skills and talents or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Now, this imposter syndrome has been around since about 1978. It's very, very common in dog owners and in dog professionals in the industry, in the dog training industry. And I believe a lot of this imposter syndrome of not feeling good enough and not feeling like that the dog is doing well with us is a lot to do with the scale of genetic behaviour, because we often feel if they were with someone else, they would be amazing. You know, if my dog were with someone like an expert, they would be fantastic. And still quite often that's not the case, because we don't know how far they're stretched on their spectrum, how far stretched they are, and how, you know, quite often we don't know how well they can be, how good they can be at something. But it is so common, this imposter syndrome, and it's, as I say, it's common in many dog owners, because we often feel like we just can't do it. And you know, if you're trying to modify behaviour, that takes time as well, which we'll get onto, but that can be incredibly difficult when you feel like you're not good enough. And I'm sure a lot of people in this group have experienced that before, because it is a very common thing. So that's called imposter syndrome. It may help you to look it up. You may find that valuable. So I've, as a professional, so as a dog professional in the industry, it can often be worse even, because I can feel, so if you take me for example, I can feel that I am not good enough at my job because of perhaps lack of progress with a client's dog, or, you know, a couple of clients at one time can do that, you know, and it starts to make you question yourself, your own skills, your own accomplishments, things that you can do. And it's a very common thing, and it's a very, as they say, it's a psychological pattern. So it can affect individuals in many different industries, but it's something that may be very relevant to you. So if you're working with a professional, certainly it can help. So if there's someone who has a good understanding of dog behaviour and it's like their life's passion to work on dogs and to help people understand them, then it can certainly help to work with them. But it doesn't guarantee you will have this angel dog who doesn't do anything, because they're still limited by genetics. Everybody is limited by genetics, but you can certainly, you know, teach and condition things that you want to happen more so. So that's what we'll get onto now, is how do you change behaviour, or how do you go about changing behaviour? So I've got loads of notes on this. I'm actually really impressed with myself that I'm getting through so many of them, because I thought I would have missed out loads by now, but they're all coming out, which is good. So I don't know if anyone's commenting at the moment, but my Facebook on my laptop is playing up and I can't see them on here. So if you are, I'm not ignoring you. I'm sure it'll work in a second, and then I'll be able to interact with you. So feel free to keep commenting at the minute if you are. So if you're trying to change dog behaviour, the first thing that you need to determine or to work out, or have your dog behaviour professional work out, is if the behaviour is genetic, if it's genetic based, or if it is learned and practiced based on experience. Now, obviously, even if it is genetic based, there will be an element of the dog has practiced this behaviour and they've got better at it because it's well rehearsed. So there will be an element of that, but it's the underlying cause of the behaviour. Is the cause genetics and therefore they've practiced it? Or is the cause because it's just been a learned behaviour that has appeared and then been practiced and got better? So if it is genetic, it's certainly workable, but it may mean there hits a point where there then needs to be management and control. And if it is learned behaviour through experience, the likelihood is that you can change it. So obviously it takes a full 8 weeks for a new habit to be formed. So this is a new habit that is not instinctive. If you have instinctive behaviours, they can take 1 or 2 repetitions for your dog to do, and then they're like, right, got it, I know what I'm doing, because it's intrinsically, internally rewarding for them to do it, because they've been genetically designed to do it, or it's very instinctive for them. If it's something that you're trying to teach that goes against that, it takes 8 weeks to fully put in a new habit, for a new habit to be formed and for it to start to become more of the norm for your dog. So that means that you have to be 100% consistent throughout those 8 weeks of setting up scenarios so that the dog can practice this behaviour that you want them to do. Because if you're not practicing it solidly for 8 weeks, then they're not learning it. So it could then potentially become 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 15 weeks, because they're not learning it consistently. So you might think you're doing it for 8 weeks, but if the dog isn't experiencing it consistently for 8 weeks, then they're not learning throughout those 8 weeks. So you may stop doing your training. And usually people give up long before 8 weeks anyway. This is often why people will go between different techniques, different trainers maybe, different things, because we have our own frustrations as well. But because quite commonly people are not aware that it takes 8 weeks to start to form a new habit for a dog and for teaching a new behaviour. So you need to consistently make sure that for 8 weeks they are practicing the new behaviour that you want them to do. And alongside that, not only are you setting up scenarios so that they can practice that and putting them in position so they can practice it, you also need to be preventing their practice of their instinctive behaviour or their genetic behaviour or their practiced behaviour that you are trying to stop. So if you're working on your dog not doing a particular behaviour, you need to make sure they are not practicing that behaviour anywhere for the 8 weeks that you're trying to teach your new behaviour, because in their mind it is very, very well channeled to slip into this behaviour that they always do. So in order for them to go against that, you need to shut off that pathway in their brain, so there is no practice of that behaviour and they're only practicing what you want them to be practicing for those 8 weeks, because otherwise they're just going to go straight into what comes naturally to them. So I'll give you a few examples of this, so it may help to clarify what I mean. I don't know what my laptop is doing. Me and technology. I'm not ignoring anybody. I can't see any comments. So a couple of examples. So if you're working on your dog not running off every single dog that you see, perhaps recalls is your issue, and your dog just wants to bolt off and see them as soon as they do. Now, of course, that could indicate there is a socialising need, a social requirement that's not being met. So they're running up to every dog they see because that's what they have to do because they're desperate to socialise. But if you're trying to change that behaviour, not only do you need to address the need that they have, but you have to prevent them being able to do it for 8 weeks. So that could be a long line. For 8 weeks they're on a long line, so they cannot run at another dog. And for those 8 weeks, you work on what you want them to do instead. So when a dog comes into view for your dog, you work on them doing something different, which could be playing with you, coming to you, sniffing instead. It depends on what you're trying to work on them doing, but whatever it is you want them doing, they need to practice that instead and not have access to what they want, what they are driven to do. For example, if your dog barks at other dogs, say maybe barking is their thing, then you need to set up the scenario for 8 weeks that they are able to see dogs and work on doing something different. Now, of course, if you have barking, it may be that there is a social need that's not being met. It may be they need more distance. It may be they need to be closer and it's a frustration. But again, this is why dog behaviour specialists can help, because you need to determine why it is. However, they need to be able to be set up for 8 weeks solidly to see dogs, to work on what you'd like them to do instead. So instead of barking at a dog, to be honest, they could do any one of a million things. Sniffing, taking treats, looking the other way, looking at the floor, keep walking. But they need to feel comfortable enough to be able to do these things. And you need to prevent access to them barking at dogs for 8 weeks. Now that could mean that you put up sticky frosted film on your windows in the house because your dog is a barker out the window all day, every day. They bark when the dogs go past. We're unlikely to be able to change that on a walk if every day they're barking at dogs out the window. Or if your dog, when they go in the car, barks at dogs if they go past the car or near the car, then having a crate that's covered when they're in the car will prevent access to that. And then that can be worked on. But you need to prevent access to where they're practicing this behaviour alongside building in what you want them to do instead over the 8 weeks. And that is how you change behaviour. So there is a extinction burst that you need to be aware of as well. So an extinction burst is, I'll read out the definition of it for you and then I'll apply it to dogs. So it usually applies to attention-seeking behaviour and frustration. That's usually when you see an extinction burst. What it means is when a previously reinforced or learned behaviour temporarily increases when the reinforcement for the behaviour is removed. So in dog training terms, that means when the dog used to get reinforcement for something and you take away that reinforcement, they try harder at what used to get it. So for example, if you have a barking dog and they bark whenever they want attention or they bark when they get frustrated, they bark at you for attention in some way. So like you have that as a problem. You usually maybe look at them or you talk to them or you try and play with them in some way or try to distract them in some way from the barking behaviour at you. Then that's attention. So you're placing attention at it. So it's gaining, regardless of whether it is negative attention or distraction, it's still attention, it's still getting placed there. So again, there could well be a need that needs to be met there. Attention, most likely being it, that there's lacking attention in some way. But you want to work on the barking part. You don't want barking being how they get attention. Then if you're working on ignoring them when they bark, or leaving the room when they bark, you expect that behaviour to get worse before it gets better, because barking usually works. Barking is what normally would get your attention. So they try harder because it normally works. Do not give up at that stage. Never give up during an extinction burst. And this is, again, quite commonly what people will do. They will give up and say, oh, it doesn't work. It does work, you just have to do it for longer. It's because the dog is going through an extinction burst where they're trying harder before they give up. So don't give in to an extinction burst, whatever you do. But it is super important to know, if you're working on something like barking, that barking is self-rewarding. It's intrinsically rewarding for dogs to do it. So some dogs will bark at you or at themselves or at nothing, even if your attention isn't there anymore, because they found it so rewarding to do it. And again, that's very, very likely to be if it's on their genetic line of what they do, because barking is rewarding for them, because that's an important part of their genetics, is to bark when they get excited or aroused or just in general. Then that may be stronger for your dog and harder to work with. But it's super important to know that, particularly if you're working with attention-seeking behaviour or frustration behaviour, that there is a need that needs to be met there. So if you're not meeting that need that the dog has, if you're not aware that they're trying to gain something, and that could be very specific to that dog, what that something is, but if they're trying to gain something and you're not addressing that need and then providing it in a different way, then like when they're not barking, if you're not providing, if you take attention seeking, barking for example, and you're just working on leaving the room whenever they bark, fine. But what that you need to do is address that need they have for attention, which means setting them up to get attention in different times before any barking happens. So that may mean you do a handling grooming session each day with them, and you do a little mini play session with them that you instigate. Or you could sit on the floor with no phone, no TV or no nothing, and just give 10 minutes to the dog before settling on the sofa to watch TV. So it's providing them with that need that they have so that they learn how they can get what they want. They don't have to resort to the behaviour you're trying to stop, because that behaviour you're trying to stop is not enjoyable to live with for yourself, possibly not for the dog either. But it is important to meet the need. So it's very important to know what need is trying to be met when you're trying to change behaviour. Dogs don't do things for no reason, usually. It's not common. There's always a reason they do something, and kind of meeting that is important. So that is my first little geeky chat. That's my first live about like geeky things. So I only chose 5 topics today, and I just wanted to do a touch on each, so 10 minutes there on each little topic. Next week I have part 2 of geeky chat, and it's 5 other topics, which about how dogs learn, about changing behaviour, what affects what, because it's so helpful to know all of this when you're working with your dog. So I hope that was helpful to you all, and I will save this live chat because I'm aware it's very, no one knew I was going to do it, I just appeared, and I would hate for you to miss out on that information, so I will save it now. Okay, take care guys, have a nice evening, bye.